Dr. Anthony Fauci delivering a clear message.
We need to hunker down and get through this fall and winter because it's not going to be easy. One of the things is when you're experiencing an outbreak, don't ever underestimate the potential of the pandemic.
That stark warning from the nation's top infectious disease expert comes amid new evidence that the public's trust has been shaken. A Kaiser Family Foundation poll finds 62% of Americans are worried the president's political pressure will lead the FDA to rush a vaccine before it's proven safe and effective. Public confidence in the CDC has dropped 16% just since April, and more than half say they would not get vaccinated if it were approved before Election Day.
I understand why people may be a little reluctant to say, well, I'm ready today for this vaccine. They want to see the data. So do I.
NIH Director Francis Collins insists science, not politics, will lead the way.
A lot of it is this concern about maybe they're going too fast. This term Operation Warp Speed may have kind of put people off. It's gotten a little political. The coalescence of all of these things with the national election probably hasn't helped.
And Dr. Collins, Dr. Fauci continue to suggest that we will likely see a vaccine by the end of the year or early next year. By the way, one concern about the fall, of course, is that we go into flu season. But there's now evidence from Australia and South America that people who wear their masks because of COVID are also protecting themselves from the flu. So it's possible if we all do our part, all wear masks, we'll see an improvement in the flu season as well as COVID.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado with Man-Made Survival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. I really appreciate it because today we're going to be talking about something really important that has been pretty much developing in the past few days. And I'm talking about the coronavirus. Of course, there's other things that I'm going to be getting into in other podcasts, such as the escalation in the potential war that we're going to be seeing between China and the United States. But I'll leave that for another podcast because very explosive information has come out. But today, it's very important that we get to the subject about the second lockdown that they're preparing us for. Even though they haven't come out and say that it's going to be a second lockdown, we're seeing everything being prepared for that. All right. And a lot of things that Fauci has said and a lot of things that the CDC has come out and said, points us to that direction. Even though there is a difference in what President Trump is saying and what Fauci is saying, and we have to pay attention to both, right? But with everything that we're seeing, not just in the United States, but around the world, we have to make the conclusion that, yes, we are going to a second lockdown, which is what I'm going to be getting into today. So that's why it's important for you to share this information with your friends and family and share this with your in your social media, whatever you may use, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Brighteon, whether it's Instagram, whatever the case may be. This needs to be shared because people need to get prepared for it in advance. All right. The first lockdown, people didn't know what to do. And people on this second lockdown should know what to do since we have already been through it. We should know what to expect. But the consequences are going to be much worse because we are in a worse position than when we first started. All right. As far as the economy goes, as far as jobs go, as far as people being able to pay their mortgages, being able to pay for food, everything is going to get worse if we go into the second lockdown, which is something that the government really has to think about, and the CDC. But of course, if we have this belief that, which I hold, that they're doing this on purpose because of all the things that we have seen, then we have to prepare for that. All right. One of the things that I have always said, and I've been saying pretty much from the beginning, is that the virus is real, but the response to it is what is really killing the country. All right, so we have to really pay attention to that. And not only that, the consequences of the reaction, or how the government is going about taking care of this pandemic. All right, so the consequences are very real. Even if you believe that the pandemic is a hoax, whether the virus is real or not, whether it came from China or not, whatever the case may be, the response to it is what we're suffering, is what we're going through, is what is really bringing down this country to its knees. And if we continue to this path, then it's going to be really more chaotic than we could have ever imagined. All right, because they're talking about taking this all the way to 2021. But before I get into the headlines that I have for you, the videos and everything, I want to remind you about the one sponsor that we have for this show, and it's greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. Green Medicine Encyclopedia is a science-based encyclopedia providing research evidence for nutritional medicine and natural health therapies. We partner with Green Medicine Works to bring you the best medical encyclopedia money can buy. In case you have a crap has hit the fan scenario or an incident where you require immediate medical attention, this encyclopedia is filled with cures and remedies for all kinds of ailments. When the supply chain stops and there's no more pharmacies or doctors, you'll be glad you bought your own copy of Green Medicine Encyclopedia. Men Survival Preppers get a special $40 discount with the coupon code MENMENSURVIVAL. Just click on the link that we provide at the menmensurvivalstore.com. Now, I want to make something clear because there has been several people who have actually ordered it, but there's a problem. All right, I do want to make sure that you understand that even though you find it in the website in menmensurvival.com, menmensurvivalstore.com, you actually are buying it from greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. So when you click on the item at the store, you have to read where it says that you have to click the link below, because that'll take you to the page. So you can go about it two ways. You can either go to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com, and when you purchase it, you just put in our code, which is MENMENSURVIVAL, and you get $40 off. Or you can go to the store, menmensurvivalstore.com, and when you click on it, you read the description and you find the place where it says to click on there, so it'll take you to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. All right, so I wanted to make sure that you understood that how the process worked on that one. All right, because it's not something that I provide for you, but our sponsor provides for you. All right, so I'm gonna get into what we want to be talking about today, because we are seeing signals from other countries that is telling the United States that we're going to go through our second lockdown as well. All right, we have seen Australia go into a very strict lockdown. People being arrested just for saying anything about it on social media. Their government is completely nuts. If we want to talk about tyrannical, that is as tyrannical as it gets. And I mean, it could actually get worse. But the point is that you can't even criticize anything about it on social media, then that's pretty tyrannical. All right, and not just there, but also in the UK. Recently, as I'm going to be getting into in the first headline that I have for you, is that they have been said that they're going to they have been talking about going to a second lockdown, because the doctors have told Boris Johnson that the numbers are going back up, the fatalities are going back into the hundreds, so they have to act and be proactive before the curve gets really high again, and they have to lock down. So of course that has set another wave of panic buying, which is my first headline. Shoppers post images of supermarket shelves stripped bare and delivery slots start selling out amid fears of second wave of panic buying. This from Daily Mail. There are fears that a second wave of panic buying has already begun, as shoppers have shared pictures of supermarket shelves stripped bare this weekend. Concerned shoppers have taken to Twitter to share photographs of their local supermarkets showing shelves completely empty of essential items. Fears of a second wave of coronavirus appears to be fueling the return of panic buying, despite some people pointing out that the supermarkets do stay open in the case of another national lockdown. Government scientists have spooked Boris Johnson with warnings of hundreds of daily coronavirus deaths within weeks. As they said, there is no alternative to a second national lockdown. Mr. Johnson looks to ditch his rule of six and introduce fortnight-long circuit breakers nationwide for 6 months, following claims that it was inevitable that a second wave would hit the country last night. The new approach to get the UK through winter would see it alternate periods of stricter measures measures, including bans on all social contact between households and shutting down hospitality and leisure venues like bars and restaurants, with intervals of relaxation. Schools will be shut as last resort, a Whitehall source claimed. All right, so all of this goes to show that they are preparing for a second lockdown, even though they have not officially said it. You know, people, the population are putting two and two together, so they're going to the stores, they're buying again, and you know they're panic buying, quote unquote, and because they're using certain words like there is no alternative to a second national lockdown. All right, so people have taken proactive measures to buy again, stock up again, and we're seeing a repeat of what we saw in March. And, you know, or actually for them, I think it was February, if I'm remembering correctly. But the point is that it happened again, all right? And that for you as a prepper, and for everybody else who's watching this who is not a prepper, then this should really push you to thinking, all right? If we already went through one crisis at the beginning where everybody panicked buy and they got everything they thought they needed, then why should have not they stocked up this entire time, all right? Because we've been into this pandemic for several months now, and have it ready for and if there was another lockdown. I have told you here in this program or this show, whatever you want to call it, podcast, that we were going to have a second lockdown. You know, I've been saying it probably since June, if I'm not mistaken, through all this time, saying it looks like we're going to have another lockdown, so you have to be ready. All right, and also at the beginning of all of this, if you were following the show at all, then you know that I said that you had to get prepared for us to go through this pandemic longer than what they had said in those days, because in those days they were talking about only 6 weeks that we were going to lock down the country, that was going to bring down the curve, and that we could get back to normal. You know, people could get back to to their sports, go back to school, go back to restaurants and everything. But I warned my audience, all right, if you remember, and if you were here in those days, I warned everyone, you have to be prepared longer than that, or you have to prepare for a shutdown that's going to last longer than that, because we have seen the same scenario play out in other countries around the country, because by that time, other countries had already been in lockdown longer than 6 weeks, all right? For example, China, they had been in lockdown over 72 days before they lifted anything, any restrictions. So that's why I told people you have to be ready beyond those days, all right? And it went to prove me right that we had that this pandemic, or the actually not the pandemic, but the restrictions rather, is what's lasting longer than what the pandemic is, because we have seen data, we have seen studies, we have seen doctors come out say different things than what Fauci is saying. Even Donald Trump has come out and say that you know, it's not that bad, even though it came out to be that he was playing it down, and then he turned around and said that he was actually playing it up. So who the heck knows what he's really doing? But the point is that we have to be ready either way. There's no way around it. As a prepper, you have to be ready for any scenario. Doesn't matter if it's man-made or natural, because that's our nature. You know, we like to be prepared for anything. Now, I tell you that we are going to go through a second lockdown, possibly in the next few months. And Fauci's talking about that all of this is going to last all the way to the end of 2021. All right, so a lot of people have said that they're ready for this year to be over, for this pandemic to be over, for things to go back to normal, but they're holding on to something that is no longer there. And hopefully you're not one of those. And hopefully you will come to terms with reality, and you will, you know, prepare for the future. All right, so the next headline that I have for you is from Fauci. The headline reads, Fauci warns U.S. needs to hunker down for fall and winter. It's not going to be easy. This article is from The Hill. I have a video for it. Here it is.
I just think we need to hunker down and get through this fall and winter, because it's not going to be easy. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm not predicting, but if you take a look now at what we have said might happen, actually has happened in Australia. And that is that they have had the lightest influenza season in memory. They can't remember a season this light. And the reason is they're doing the things that you're speaking about. They're wearing masks, they're physical distancing, they're washing their hands, and they're avoiding crowds. So I would hope that with a combination of everybody who should getting vaccinated with influenza and the public health measures that we do prevent us from having a bad influenza season, and we somehow or other, for common sense things, don't have a massive resurgence of COVID, because what I would like to see is keeping the lid on it, keeping the baseline down until we get a vaccine. And I do believe we'll likely get a vaccine by the end of the year, the beginning of 2021. And I think that's going to be the thing that turns it around. I just think we need to hunker down and get through this fall and winter, because it's not going to be easy. We know every time we lift restrictions, we get a blip. I mean, it's whack-a-mole. If you look, it really is. If you look at the sequence of the maps, of the heat maps, it's whack-a-mole. The southern states up, it goes down. You get Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri goes up, goes down, and now we're looking at the Dakotas and the northwestern part. It's really, quite frankly, depressing to see that, because what's ahead as we try and do that. The real critical issue is now what's going to happen 2 weeks to 3 weeks from the day before yesterday with the Labor Day holiday, which is very concerning to me.
All right, so you heard Fauci. It's not going to be easy. We have to take the same measures. We still have to have people wearing masks, everybody sanitizing, and, the flu and everything is going to be more controllable if people follow those steps. And, that's really going to be the proof, right? If we see cases, let me rephrase that. If we don't see the same type of cases that we saw in previous years with the flu, then we can say that the mask work and all the measures and everything. But if we still see a significant amount of flu out there, then we know that wearing the mask and everything is just bogus, and we shouldn't even do it anymore. But Fauci insists that we have to wear masks, not just now, but all the way through 2021, which is my next headline. Fauci will likely will wear a mask for most of 2021, even after the vaccine rolls out. This from Business Insider. Dr. Anthony Fauci says vaccine alone is not going to get us to the point where we want to be by the end of 2021. We'll need to vaccinate, social distance, continue hand hygiene, and use masks in order to get the level of coronavirus circulating between people down so low that the outbreak becomes a thing of the past. The first coronavirus vaccine will likely not protect people from getting sick at 100%, but may provide somewhere around 70% protection against symptomatic infections. Quote, I said a combination of an effective vaccine and adhering to certain public health principles will get us to the point where we want to be by the end of 2021, end quote. Fauci said during a lunchtime call over pizza on Wednesday, quote, I never said just the vaccine. You never should abandon the public health measures, end quote. All right, so for Fauci, in Fauci's mind, we're here for the long haul, all right? And you should really get that into your head as well, that we're going to see all of this probably all the way to the end of 2021. Now, we have several things going on between here and there, all right? We have the election, we have the riots going on, we have the forest fires going on, the inauguration in January 20, 2021 is probably going to be a very chaotic day. So we have a lot to worry about between here and then. So are we going to continue to do the same thing? More than likely, yes, if, we don't have this vaccine ready, which people are saying they're not going to take, and I'm one of them, and we're going to continue to see the economic devastation that all of these restrictions are putting in the country. Because don't be fooled. The reason, and I continue to hold this position, is that the reason that we're seeing this economic devastation that we were supposed to see 8 to 12 years out is because of the restrictions, all right? People not being able to work properly, restaurants not being able to open, which now they're saying that 60% of restaurants are closed permanently. All right, is the reason why companies cannot have their events. It's many reasons. The restrictions are doing a lot of things that are restricting the economy from actually continuing to where it was before the pandemic. Because if you remember correctly, we had low unemployment between all races, and the stock market all-time high, and all of the other things, right? But now because of the restrictions, now we're seeing complete opposite. We have record unemployment. Our debt has skyrocketed. They're still fighting over the stimulus, which a few days ago the White House, they sent a compromising bill to Nancy Pelosi, and she pretty much rejected it, saying that she wants more money. Now, there's two aspects from that. All right, one is that if they never come to a conclusion and they never pass a stimulus, people are going to hurt because they do not have the funds anymore to be able to pay their rent, to pay for food, bills, and everything else. All right, and also they're about to be evicted. Although the Trump administration has taken several steps, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But the point is that people are running out of money because simply they cannot work. Their business has been shut down. Their credit has been destroyed. People are getting the cars repossessed and everything. All right. The other side of that coin is that if they do pass this stimulus and they add another $3.5 trillion to the debt, then long term, that's going to create hyperinflation, and then the value of your dollar is going to be destroyed. All right. We're going to see the same thing that we saw in Venezuela. Prices go up, shortages of food and everything, because we cannot simply do those, or come up with those products if we cannot afford to actually put them in the store. Since everything is going to drive the price of the goods up, then very few people are going to be able to buy them. Even if the government does still give out food stamps and everything else, the prices of everything, since everything is going to go up, in hyperinflation, you're still going to buy very little of it. All right. So if $5 bought you 5 things, in hyperinflation, $5 will only buy you half of one thing. All right. So that's the way to really think about it. So with all of that being said, that takes me to the next headline that I have for you today. The coming wave of defaults. This from The Hill. There's a small video on it. Here it is.
The Trump administration issued an order Tuesday banning landlords from evicting tenants from properties they can no longer afford to rent due to income loss due to the coronavirus pandemic. The order was issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and it would make it illegal to evict any individual who expects to make less than $99,000 or a joint filing couple that expects to make less than $198,000 in 2020. The tenants would still be required to pay rent owed per the terms of the lease, but would be allowed to stay in their unit through the end of the year.
All right, so the article goes on to say, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association, as of June 30th, mortgage delinquencies in the U.S. had reached 8.2%, the highest since 2011 and almost double the 4.5% of a year earlier. With 53 million mortgages in the U.S., that means more than 4.3 million mortgages are delinquent. Adding to the fact that per Black Knight Mortgage Analytics, almost 5 million homes have been in forbearance. With that, I estimate that at least 1 million to 2 million more of these loans will fall delinquent before the end of this year. As for renters, the U.S. Census Bureau report that as of July, 18% were delinquent in their rent payments. That compares with less than 7% in prior years. With more than 43 million renters, that means more than 7.4 million are behind on their rental payments. With the loss of income and unemployment support, it is reasonable to believe that the number will increase by several million over the next few months. All right, so again, if they don't pass the stimulus, then there's a problem. If they do pass it, then there's another problem. One is going to be short term, and the other one's going to be long term. All right, because when they first talked about the pandemic back in April, when they passed the HEROES Act, and they said everybody $1,200, and then they sent millions of dollars to corporations who didn't really need it. And, you know, they only set the perimeter of the pandemic for people getting evicted only in July. Past that time, and we've been past that time, then all of these issues have actually come forth, and people are being evicted. People are fighting because they don't want to be evicted. There has been several stories about landlords being killed because they have come out to evict their tenants. So this is big chaos that's been created, and it's only going to get worse in the next few months, especially if Fauci is going to be successful in a second lockdown. You know, I don't know if he has come out and said that he wants another lockdown, but everything that they have said, you know, you can read between the lines and you can see that that's where we're going. So that's the important thing. And as you saw in the video, the Trump administration did another executive order telling people that they cannot evict anyone at least until the end of the year. All right. But what happens when we get past the end of the year? What if we come around in January and, you know, all of that it has expired again, and we're seeing ourselves that we have to go through all of this another year because we still don't have a vaccine, and we still have to adhere to the restrictions, and we still have to do everything that Fauci and the CDC says. What is that going to do to restaurants? What is that going to do to hotels? What is that going to do to the rest of the industries that are holding on by a thread? What is that going to do to everyone who is not employed? Are they going to get more stimulus and more stimulus to the point where the government cannot help anymore? You know, those are things that we have to really listen to and we have to think about before we continue any further. So now that you have this information, you have to take this time now to prepare for it. All right. Do not be caught at the store panic buying a second time if you did it the first time. You have to have everything in place already in order for you to be able to not have to panic buy, because let's just put it this way. If we're finding ourselves in this economic depression where people have to be lined up for miles and miles and hours at a time just to get free food, then what is it going to look like months later when these same people don't have that money anymore? All right. Here's the next thing that I have for you, because it's really important, because it really projects what I'm saying to the end of the year. All right. It is being projected that more than 50 million Americans will be fighting hunger by the end of this year. This from the economiccollapseblog.com. Has there ever been a time in your life when you haven't had enough food to make it through the week? If you have never experienced this, you are extremely fortunate. Even during the best of times, millions of Americans struggle with hunger, and these definitely are not the best of times. Right now, the U.S. has a total population of about 328 million people, and so that figure that Bloomberg quoted represents a sizable chunk of the country. And we certainly don't have to wait until the end of the year for the number to get really, really bad. In fact, it has been reported that one recent survey found that approximately 1/10 of all U.S. households haven't had enough food in a given week. I feel especially bad for the children that are going hungry. Can you imagine how bad parents must feel when their children tell them that they are hungry and the parents have nothing to provide? And this is just the beginning. Food prices are going to continue skyrocketing over the coming year. And that is going to stretch family budgets even more. Because more Americans live paycheck to paycheck, a job loss can plunge a family into dire straits very rapidly. All over the U.S., we are seeing long lines of people driving very nice vehicles waiting for up to 6 hours to get food at local food banks. All right, so that really shows how bad things are getting. All right, and we don't have to wait to get to the end of the year for us to find ourselves in that position. We have to do everything we can at this moment in order for us to either find a new job, to get more food on the table, to be able to stock up on things before there's a panic buy. All right, and if you are able to use the government assistance, I encourage you to do it, because for one, that's what it's for, and two, even if you don't want to add to the national debt or whatever it is, there's no way to save in the system anymore. It's going to crash eventually, and you have to at least take advantage of the system right now so you can set yourself up for a better future. You know, there's a lot of things that you will have to do if you have not done anything at all. You know, we're talking about someone who has just stumbled upon this podcast and has never prepared, and now they're seeing their need to prepare. For people who are in the prepper community, you know what you need. You know what you need to stock up on. You know how long of a food supply you need. And even though this also applies to you, this kind of reminds you of the urgency that there always is, that we have to make sure that we are ready for times like these, because they're not only bad, they're gonna get worse. All right. And I don't want to give you all the bad news and say that there's doom and gloom everywhere, but reality does not care about our feelings, as Ben Shapiro would say. But the fact of the matter is that things are going to get worse if we continue with the same government restrictions. I want to emphasize that we would not be going through all of this if it wasn't for the government restrictions. Yes, we were going to go down this road, but it was 8 to 12 years out. Just the restrictions alone have brought those 8 to 12 years in the future to now. So we are 8 to 12 years advanced into what we were going to be facing later on. Now, that because of this, it has prevented your children from growing, and then they getting ready or helping you get ready for that situation. You have small children, you have babies, and they're gonna depend on you 100%. They won't be able to be old enough 8 or 12 years from now to help you prepare or be prepared themselves for whatever might be coming then. But now it's here, and we have to prepare for it, because it looks like it's only going to get more dire. All right, so I have two headlines for you. One that talks about the food banks that I was saying a minute ago, and pay attention to how many meals they're giving out now. And the second one is how a person went from having a stable job to living in a tent. All right, so here's the first of the two headlines. Massive lines form outside Virginia food bank as demand hits 1 million meals per month. All right, so I want to step back after reading that headline, and I just remember that there's a video attached to this headline. All right, here it is.
Services provided by the Chesterfield Food Bank are in high demand tonight. Due to COVID-19, the amount of people depending on those services has tripled. A News reporter Tyler Thrasher joins us from Chesterfield with how they can help.
Ironbridge Road every weekend. For those in need, getting in line to get a cart full of food at Chesterfield Food Bank is vital. Kim Hill, the CEO of the food bank, is just thankful to help as many people as possible.
You roll down that window and you see the tears in that person's eyes, never thinking they would ever need the help of a food bank. It breaks your heart.
With over 30,000 people coming to get donations monthly, the food bank is averaging over 1 million meals a month.
That is triple the amount of people we normally feed before COVID.
Now, they need volunteers to keep up with demand.
We need every volunteer that is willing to help us. We need volunteers during the week to help us sort, get the food ready, drive a truck, go pick up food from stores, from other people that are donating.
They are even changing the way the food bank operates due to the increased need caused by the pandemic.
The life at the food bank here, we think, has changed forever. We are one of the richest countries in the whole world. We need to be able to take care of our own people.
All right, so you heard the lady at the end say that we're the richest country in the world and we should be able to help our own. But for how long? I want to ask that question, for how long? Because when you compare the United States with Venezuela, there's a lot of similarities that you see on there. All right, and now people are going for the groceries, as you saw in the video, on foot. If it wasn't for these food banks, then all those people would see themselves in a worse position than they are right now. So that's why I encourage you to prepare if you have not already. The second headline that I have for you is this. From a stable job to a tent, a waiter's homeless struggle. This from AP News. Leo is one of an estimated 20 million Americans living paycheck to paycheck, spending more than 30% of their income on rent, who are likely to experience homelessness at some point, according to the National Coalition for the Homeless. The group predicts the number could increase by 45% because of the pandemic. Quote, "It makes me just want to find a way out and not depending on anyone ever again," end quote, he said. when the hard times come, there's not going to be anyone there. And it's really unfortunate that it has to be that way, but it's true in some instance. You know, in his case, people that he knew stopped pretty much talking to him. The one person who the one person who was able to help could only help, you know, very limited, because they were in the same shoes. They were in the same situation. They couldn't help very much. So he had to struggle in living in a tent out in the city in Florida. He would have to go to a gas station and, you know, freshen up, wash his shirt, brush his teeth and stuff like that. And then just go out and try to find something to eat, trying to find a job. So the good thing about him in that story, if you go and read the article, is that he finally did get his unemployment from the government, and he did get his taxes back. So he was able to at least buy a vehicle, which of course he lives in. But the point is that things can get that bad that quickly. And if we don't have a plan for it and prepare for it in the future, as we have seen for many years now, then we can find ourselves in this position. Now, we want to avoid that at all costs, because we have kids, you know, we have relatives, we have spouses, and we don't want to find ourselves in that situation. That's why it's important for us to get prepared. Now, if you're in a financial state where you are able to prepare in advance, then you need to go ahead and do it, because even if it's not affecting you right now, it's very possible it can affect you in the future. Now, I know people personally who follow this channel who have been affected, and they're actively looking for a job, but they're not able to because of the pandemic. All right. So again, the virus is real, but the response to it is exaggerated, and we're facing the consequences of that right now. All right. So now I want to move this into the next hand that I have for you, but I do want to point out that the first part of everything that I talked about, you know, from the UK getting their panic buying, and Fauci talking about that we're going to be wearing masks all the way to 2021, with possibly having the restrictions all the way to 2021, that is what we have seen the consequences for citizens. All right. Now we're going to move into the part where we see the consequences for the government. All right. The U.S. debt, as of right now that I've seen it, is 26.7 trillion. And now the deficit has actually been, you know, setting new records. The government is spending so much money, and we have already spent next year's money and the year after that, or some of it. All right. With the Federal Reserve just printing money, Congress asking for more money, you know, with the stimulus, Trump, he's compromising, and he's adding onto the debt, you know. So the next one that I have for you says federal spending tops 6 trillion for the first time. Deficit tops 3 trillion for the first time as well. This from cnsnews.com. Federal spending has topped $6 trillion for the first time in any fiscal year in the nation's history, and the federal deficit has topped $3 trillion for the first time, according to the monthly Treasury statement of August that was released today. There is still another month left in fiscal 2020, which runs through the end of September. As of the end of August, according to the Treasury, the federal government has spent a record $6 trillion. At the same time, total federal revenues were $3 trillion, leaving the federal government with a record deficit of $3 trillion. All right, so as I said, we already spent next year's money. So imagine you going to work, you know, this year, and you put everything on your credit card, but now you're obligated to go to work all of next year without actually having made any money, because you already spent it this year. You know, that's how you could actually say, or, you know, you could put the that's how you could describe it. So it's really important that we take notes of all of this, because of course that is going to affect us greatly in the future. That's why it's important for us to prepare what we're seeing now and prepare for the future, because eventually all this money printing, as I've said a minute ago, is gonna stop eventually. The government won't be able to help the way that they are helping now, you know, giving out money, whether it's through the stimulus packages, whether it's EBT, whether it's housing assistance, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, and whatever other program that the government spends billions and trillions of dollars on. All right, actually, the health industry is the one that they pay a lot of money to, over $1.5 trillion a year on Medicaid and Medicare. All right, so all of that is going to eventually accumulate and accumulate until the foundation just completely crumbles and we sink, to the deepest depths of all this debt and all this misery that we're seeing. All right, so the next headline that I have for you is very important because it kind of brings it back to what the government is thinking for the citizens through taxation. All right, here it is. Wealth tax, a warning to all taxpayers. This from Zero Hedge. Former U.S. Democrat presidential nominee Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have already suggested a new wealth tax on wealthy Americans. Joe Biden's tax proposal are predicted to increase taxes for households at every income level and make the federal tax code more progressive. But he has, to my knowledge, rejected a proposal for a wealth tax. The wealth tax is simply a property tax, but instead of taxing only real estate, it covers wealth in all forms: stocks, cash, jewelry, yachts, cars, paintings, any tangible assets that could be appraised a monetary value. By contrast, most of the other taxes are based on income and consumption. Wealth tax is not a new thing in Europe, but most countries have scrapped it on grounds that it is considered to be counterproductive. Wealth taxes encourage avoidance, evasion, and capital flight. All right, so in other words, as I've said in the past, that people will avoid it and they will just go to other places. As I've talked about Venezuela in the past, is that people who are going to be able to afford to flee the country are going to be able to. However, we're seeing this problem of debt all over the planet. It's not just the United States, but it's everywhere else as well. And eventually, the hyperinflation will find those people who flee the country. So you must have a plan, if you plan on fleeing the country, to be able to be set up over there nicely before anything happens. All right, so you have to really think about where you want to spend the apocalypse at this point. So if these people leave, as I've said a second ago, if they leave because they're trying to avoid the wealth tax, because that's taxing everything, and of course that's government overreach, but the point is that if they leave, eventually the 99% will start to become the 1% themselves, right? However, let's say that all the billionaires leave the country, then all the millionaires are going to stay until they can't afford it anymore, and then they're going to get out of here, and then the 100,000aires, they're going to stay here until they can leave. All right, and then the couple thousand people, or the people who make a couple $1,000s a year, we're gonna stay here, all right, because we won't be able to afford it. All right, there's people. The median income in the country is $72,000, if I'm not mistaken. All right, a lot of people live with a lot less money than that, and then a lot of people live in the poverty line. So those are the people who are going to stay here, and they're going to be taxed at the wazoo, and they're going to have to endure through all of this, as people in Venezuela have seen. All right, all the people who could afford to get out, all the upper class and all the upper middle class and some of the middle class, everybody else from there below stayed, and they've been suffering the consequences of not being able to leave for the past 6 to 7 or 8 years. All right, that's why you have to set yourself up before anything happens. All right, and you also have to remember that it's very likely that you're going to outlive your preparedness. So you have to prepare for that as well. All right, so I want to end with the next headline, and then I'm going to get into the preparedness for all of this, because it's really important for us to get prepared for what we have been talking about today. Suicide among U.S. kids and young adults jumped 57% in the past decade. That's from MSN. And that headline is really important because we are seeing the consequences of the restrictions, not just in the government level, where where we can potentially have hyperinflation, but also in the citizen level. All right, we have seen how people are going from having a stable job, even though they're living paycheck to paycheck, to becoming homeless. All right, that was just a person who seemed to have been single. But what if it's a family of 5, of a family of 7, whatever the case may be? People, as I've shared in the past, families have actually moved in together until the last person that they were living with, they are about to lose their house too, because they also lost their job, and they're about to get kicked out either by the bank or by their landlord. All right. So we are seeing this, and people are gonna find themselves that there's no way out, and then they're gonna commit suicide. We're gonna see that suicide jump even more. All right, and that is something that I have shared here in the past, that we're about to go into the Christmas time, into the holiday time, which here in the United States is mainly Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. When we go into that season, people tend to get the holiday blues, and then suicides tend to jump during this time. But if we're going through a economic collapse, into another lockdown, into more restrictions, into everything that we're seeing as people are begging to go back to normal, then we're going to see the jump in suicides probably get even higher. I hope it doesn't happen, but we must get prepared for that as well. And for that one, if you have someone in your family that who suffer from depression, or that they get the seasonal depression, or the holiday depression, whatever you want to call it, then try to get them ready for what's coming. All right, try talk to them, therapies, all those things, so they can withstand what they might be witnessing in the next few weeks and the next few months. Because let's remember, this is not the only problem we're facing right now as a country. We're also facing the riots. We're also facing the threat of civil war. We're also facing the election. And not only that, we're facing the threat of going to World War III with China, with Russia, with Iran, with North Korea, whoever. The point is that all of that combined could push a lot of people over the edge. And let's try to get them help right now before all of that even happens, so they can have the tools that they will need in order for them to be able to survive all of that. All right, at least mentally. Now, for the preparedness for all of this, as I've said in the beginning, people are panic buying again, and you don't have to find yourself in that position too. All right, look around your house right now. If you're able to afford it, or if you're able to set aside a part of your EBT so you can stock up on things, then you need to go ahead and do that budget right now before people start panic buying. Remember what happened last time? Shelves were cleaned out in hours. They had to let the senior citizens come in first very early in the morning before everybody else, so they can get a chance to get a few things. All right, but for the elderly, I understand that there's a lot of people who are a very fixed budget. All right, but if you can, go ahead and stock up right now, or ask your family to help you. You probably have a granddaughter or a grandson who is really close to you. You can ask them if they can help you fill up a tub, whatever, with canned goods, stuff that you like, stuff that you're probably gonna need if you're gonna bake from scratch. So let's get back into baking and cooking from scratch, rather than having a hamburger helper help us every night, because it's gonna be people who can use all the cooking materials to be able to cook from scratch, rather than finding at the store already, because already finished, already made. Because that's something that a lot of people have lost touch with, is how to bake from scratch. And that's something that my mom, through this pandemic, has actually gotten back in touch with. She learned to bake again, or not again, but she refreshed herself on the things, on the recipes that she remembered that she used to bake us when I was little, but she didn't have the need to anymore, because we grew up and got married. And now she does a few things for her grandkids, but she forgot certain recipes, or forgot how much it was needed. So she was practicing through all this pandemic, and she remembered how to make bread again. Since I'm Mexican, she remembered how to make tamales again, and other things like that. So if you're able to, then get the ingredients you're gonna need, that you're gonna be able to cook from scratch, that's gonna last a lot longer than just buying something that's already cooked, like a fast food place or something like that, a restaurant or whatever. That could be the preparedness for this video, that you remember or you start learning how to cook from scratch, and that applies to both male and females, because there's families who are single parents, whether male or female, who are going to be the ones that the kids are going to look up to be fed. All right. And not just that, another thing that you have to also consider, if you have the means now, because, there's still people working, there's still people doing well off. There's still billionaires in the world, and there's still people who are doing okay in the community. If you're able to get your hands into, get gold and silver, because gold and silver is going to help you come out on the other side. All right, because I have shared before, in Venezuela, what happened is that they were trading gold in the black market. All right, people were trading gold for food, and then the people who couldn't, the people who fled, they used their gold and silver to trade the currencies that the countries they went into. All right, and now they were doing okay, because let me remind you, in Venezuela, 1 ounce of gold is worth a couple million of their dollars. Right, so just having an ounce of gold can put you in the millions, even though hyperinflation wouldn't make it last very long. But the point is that now with an ounce of gold, you can feed your family for a whole month. And even though that in the United States silver is not that expensive right now, still, and gold might be, depending on your budget, you can get both of those, and then you can trade accordingly. Now, other thing that you can do is learn to barter. And that is a little more tricky, because at the time, people who have plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of guns, plenty of ammo, plenty of everything, they're the ones who want to get the gold. They're the ones that want to get the silver, because they have plenty of everything, right? Because they're not going to trade their last bag of rice for a little bit of gold, because they won't be able to eat that gold, right? But if they have plenty to where they can actually accumulate that gold and still be well off, when another currency comes around, whether it's cryptocurrency or whether it is a government issuing new currency, then they can trade that gold and silver for those new dollars, or or that Bitcoin, whatever it is, and then that society is going to be able to use that currency to be able to trade back and forth, and that's how the government will start rolling the ball again. Right? Whether they're doing it on purpose or not, you have to set yourself up for that future. All right, so if you can, get your hands in gold and silver as much as you can afford. If you can afford a couple $100,000, then get a couple $100,000 worth of gold and silver. If you can afford millions of dollars worth of it, then get it. Obviously, you don't want to put all your resources into it. Just something that that you can use, even if, something that you can do if you don't have to really worry about it. If you spend $10,000 worth of gold and silver and it doesn't really hurt your wallet, then you might as well do it. Now, if it does hurt your wallet, then I would suggest that you first get your food, water, medicine, ammo, guns, and everything in place before you move into gold and silver. All right? Because again, you cannot eat gold and silver. You can only trade it. So I'm going to leave all of this that I've talked about today here. I'm almost at the 1 hour mark. That's without even editing the video yet. So I'm going to go ahead and leave things here. I want to remind you about our very first sponsor of the show, greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. You can go to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com to get a copy of the encyclopedia. Remember, you can search any illness that you can think of, and you can get, the remedies for it, natural medicine for it. And not only that, you can print it out. That's the best part of all of it, because, you pay for the program. It has everything that you need to know in it already. And you can print it out and put it in your books, in your medical folder. And just whenever you need it, just go back for reference, and you know exactly what you're going to need. You can add pictures to it and everything, so it'll make it easier to identify. But the point is that this is very beneficial. So I encourage you to get it. Remember, go to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com and put in the coupon code Man Survival for you to get $40 off. You know, $40, that's a pretty good bit off the price. So I encourage you to go on there. Or you can go to mansurvivalstore.com, so you can look on there, get the link that's going to be on there, and it's going to take you directly to the site, and you purchase it from them. Again, we don't have access to the program to give it out. What we're doing is that we have the link on there, so we can link you to the owner of that site, and then there, when you put the coupon code, they're the ones that give you the discount. All right. So again, go to greenmedicineencyclopedia.com. My name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.